Abelo from IsraelOnWire.com, and here with the breaking news update of tonight's major news here in Israel, where the Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit has decided to indict Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on a couple of different cases. Some of the cases on breach of public trust, and one case actually on bribery. Alright, so let's go into this. I did a video last week going into the details of much of the mafioso tactics that have been used by the police investigators and the prosecutor's office to get the testimonies from some of the key witnesses, and also some of the major red flag question marks about some of the tactics used by the prosecutor's office, not just in this case, but in many cases. So you can go to that video. I'll post the link below in order to watch. But understand this. This is sad on many levels. It's sad, one, because a sitting Prime Minister of Israel is being indicted. That in itself is sad. It's sad, number two, because Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, hands down, is the best Prime Minister the State of Israel has ever had. With all of my complaints about him and what he's done that I've disagreed with, or what he hasn't done enough, for instance, that he did not take care of the many faults within the justice system, and correcting them and taking advantage of his term in office to make corrections to the justice system, because there's so much conflict of interest going on within the justice system. And he did not take advantage of his years in power to make the necessary changes, even with the last government. Still, even with everything I have of my own critique of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, hands down, he has been the best Prime Minister for the State of Israel, allowing it to grow tremendously in so many ways, to be a world power, to be the tiny country we are, yet a mammoth world power, looked upon equally with some of the other world powers of the world. It's happened under the watch of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So it's sad that someone of his caliber and what he has achieved and the sacrifices he has taken as an individual in his life in order to dedicate his time for the people of Israel and the State of Israel and the Jewish people, that he is being indicted. And on the third level, it is sad because, again, anyone who's been following me and following my videos and writings over the years, you've heard about the flaws and the biases within some of the top-tier leaders of the justice system, whether and it is sad that they have taken this witch hunt, and I call it a legal witch hunt. It's been happening for 20 years, folks. Ever since Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was first elected back in 1996, the legal people within the legal establishment have been out to get him, wasting millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of shekels, of dollars, of taxpayer money of Israelis in order to go after and try to catch Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on something to take him down. And the fact that a Jewish Prime Minister of Israel is being taken down on issues that have mostly been fabricated and mafioso tactics used in order to get testimony. Again, I'm not going into the details of how they've gotten it all and on what they're indicting. But it is very, very sad because it is a black eye on the Jewish people. It is a black eye on the State of Israel, all because there is a certain power base within the judicial system. Call it a deep state. In Israel, it's not a deep state because they're out there. They're very shallow. They show themselves. You're talking about Shai Nitzan, the head of the prosecutor's office. You're talking about Liat Ben Ari, the head of one of the offices of the prosecutor's office that's been involved in building up this case against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. You're talking about Supreme Court justices who always have hypocritical rulings against the strengthening of the Jewish state of Israel, against being able to defend Israel, even though they make the same ruling one way for Arabs, they make another ruling on the same exact case, the same exact merits, but against the Jews. There's just so much inconsistency and conflict of interest within the legal establishment. And what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said tonight, when he made the announcement following the decision of the indictment, he said there's no one investigating the investigators. And that's also what the Minister of Justice said last week. There is no authority that is looking over the workings of the prosecutor's office and the investigators to make sure that they are acting properly. They believe that they are the law, yet there are ways that they are abusing the law to enforce their own political agenda. This is a political coup using the legal establishment. Now, let me just tell you the ramifications. So, many people are saying that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should step down. Here's the problem with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stepping down. And put aside the political situation and putting together a government. That's a whole other Pandora's box. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stepping down, even though, first of all, you are innocent until proven guilty. This is only an indictment. It hasn't been proven in a court of law. So he's still innocent, and even according to Israeli law, he is allowed to continue acting as prime minister. Yes, according to Israeli law, you do not have to step down when you're indicted. Okay, that's a whole different issue. In any case, if Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would step down, you would have a precedent where a prime minister is taken down by a coup, by a deep state, shallow state, whatever you want to call it, coup, putting fear within every other politician to ever consider trying to make the changes necessary to the justice system, to allow them to have an overlooked body to ensure that they are going by the rules and going by the law. It's the craziest thing is that the Attorney General himself, Avichai Mandelblit, just a few years ago, said himself that he was being set up by the legal establishment, by the prosecutor's office. Yes, today's Attorney General, who is going according to the prosecutor's office information and case, just a few years ago, he himself came out against the funny practices and the setups and the fabricated cases that they make against officials, because they made one against him a few years ago. And again, anyone who wants to go into a deep dive of that, just Google the Harpaz Barak case. That was a few years ago, and Mandelblit was the Attorney General of the IDF at the time. And I'm sure my analysis is they still have that hanging over him right now, the prosecutor's office, Shai Nitzan, and basically saying, well, if you don't go and indict Netanyahu, well, we're going to get you, and you're going to have to pay a heavy price, and your family and your life is going to have to pay a heavy price. That's part of my thinking of what's going on, because there are so many cases where people in power, so many politicians like Yaakov Ne'eman, like Chaim Ramon, that they were ministers or they were supposed to be ministers, that they were taken down by the legal establishment with fabricated cases or cases that were blown out of proportion to stop them in their tracks from being able to do their jobs and make the changes necessary that they wanted to make to the justice system. So everybody with their eyes open sees there is a problem with some rotten apples who are leading the way within the justice system. Call it a deep state, call it a shallow state. Doesn't make a difference. They're out there, and people who want to see can see it. And the problem is, if Netanyahu steps down, he's been the strongest, the one to ever stand up to this corrupt group within the legal establishment. Again, not everyone is bad, not everyone is corrupt, but there is a corrupt few with enough power that they are misabusing the rule of justice, misabusing the justice system, doing an injustice in the name of the law. And Netanyahu has been standing up against it all this time. If they succeed in taking him down, every other politician will be afraid of ever being able to accomplish anything because they know they can be taken down and taken out of power. Okay, that is what this is about. It's not about whether Netanyahu is guilty or not guilty. Right? Because again, you look at the cases, you understand. Go read Carolyn Glick's article where she details the brief put together by the American lawyers, including Alan Dershowitz, basically saying that it would be crazy for Israel to indict Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on bribery, because it's a bribery dealing with media. It makes no sense. It's bad for a precedent for the world. And here, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is being indicted in one case on breach of trust and another case of bribery. I doubt he'll be indicted. He was indicted. I doubt he'll go to jail. Innocent until proven guilty. But still, if he steps down, then it'll be very, very hard for another politician to have the guts to stand up and want to enforce the changes necessary to the legal establishment so that they have an overseer to ensure they are going by the rules. And just another piece of information is there is a judge, Hila Gerstel, I think is her name. She was actually put in a position to try to put in place an overseeing body. And at first she came from the establishment and very much supported it. But while she was in her position of trying to put together this overseeing body, she realized the rotten apples within the system and how they were taking advantage of the system. And today she has gone public calling out that change is necessary and that these rotten apples need to be stopped. And they have to be overseen so that they go by the law and do not abuse the law and misabuse their position as the justice system. She is a judge from the system who came out saying that it is crazy that there's no overseeing in place to stop it. So again, to put everything into perspective, and again, Amiel is saying the United States is having problems too. It is very ironic. You have to say it is very ironic that this whole impeachment thing is going on against President Trump, and now this whole indictment against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, two leaders who you can disagree with their personality, you can say they have personality flaws, character flaws, but there are two leaders who truly are dedicated to do the best they can for their countries, putting their own personal ambitions aside. Trump could be more of a millionaire by not being president. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could be more of a millionaire by not being prime minister. He was an extremely successful businessman and speaker on the circuit. So they could be very successful in their own lives, yet they have dedicated their lives to try to help their countries. You could say both of them are of the conservative bent, and yet you have a establishment within the system, again, deep state, shallow state, whatever you want to call it, that is out to get both of them. In America, against President Trump, who's helping America in so many ways, and you don't have to like him, you don't have to love him, you can disagree with many things, but he is helping America in so many ways. And Israel, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, how he has helped Israel in so many ways. So here you have an internal, deep state, shallow state, whatever, trying to bring both of them down. And for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, if he steps down, and people are saying, let him prove himself in court, and he can prove himself in court, okay? But if he does step down and leave the political realm, the biggest danger is that it'll be very hard for any other politician who sees the problems within the justice system, this deep state within the justice system, will be very hard for any of them to have the guts to challenge the justice system and make the necessary changes so this doesn't happen again, because they know they can be taken down. They know fabricated cases can be taken down. They know their family members, that their friends, that their close advisors can be persecuted, can be extorted to give false information and give statements that are not necessarily true, and if not, they can be put in jail, or their families can be torn apart. People's lives have been torn apart by this because they were connected to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. All right? Close advisors and people Netanyahu worked with, their lives have been hell because this legal cadre have abused their power and extorted and have used mafia tactics to get them to admit things or get them to say the statements that allow them to have their case, even though it goes against previous statements and other information. Again, anyone interested in more of the details of some of the really questionable tactics and even mafia tactics that the prosecutor's office and chief investigators have taken, go look at the other video I did. I'll put the link below so you can watch it. In the meantime, the one thing everyone can do is pray. And I'm not even talking about praying for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm talking about praying for truth and for a true justice system that does not abuse its power. And you have to understand, folks, when the Torah, God is speaking to judges and rabbis and saying, justice is so important, you have to be as clean as a whistle. Because what does God know? God knows that we're all human and we all have faults. Even the best of the judges and the smartest of the judges can be bribed or can be influenced because they're friends with people involved in a case. God knew that. Tzedek tirtov is not for us to, is not a saying for the layman. It's a saying for those in a position of power to watch themselves and be as clean as a whistle. And we have to pray that we get the leaders that can allow us to set up that system, and that we have those people in power. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And while I like to say, yes, we have a justice system we can count on, there are plenty of rotten apples in every justice system. Not just in the corrupt countries like whatever corrupt countries in Europe or South America. Even in good countries, there are corrupt people. Even in the great United States of America, there are some judges who are corrupt and some lawyers who are corrupt. And even in the great state of Israel, there are some judges who are corrupt and there are some justice officials who are corrupt. Why? Because that's human nature. It's human nature, folks. God gave us the Torah with a toolbox to try to overcome our human nature, to be better than what our human natural tendencies drives us to act. And even for the judges, and I know plenty of people who work in the courts, and they tell me many of these judges, they walk around like they're God. And that shows that they are not following tzedek tirtov. Because if you are in that position of utmost power, you should be the most humble of the humble. The second you walk around as if you're God, you know you failed. You failed as a judge. You failed as a prosecutor. Your attitude shows you failed. You are already abusing your power by acting and talking to people as if you're powerful. When anyone is has that much power, in that high of a position, to be able to influence people's lives, they have to be the most humble of the humble. And we all have to pray that as soon as possible, we each in our own countries, we merit to have those type of people in power. And people in power should want to have an overseeing power over them. Because it's so easy to make a mistake. It's so easy to be influenced. It's so easy to go after a bribe when you're in power. It's so easy, and you think you can get away with it. And you know the law, so you can abuse the law or misuse the law or use loopholes or whatever. It's so easy when you're in power. So the people in power should be the ones that should want the overseeing, to ensure, to hold them back and help them. It's about helping you. And yet the justice system here in Israel has stopped in its tracks every chance and every initiative to set up a proper overseeing. Even if it's just splitting the powers of the Attorney General, because the Attorney General in Israel is supposed to be a defender and an advisor to the Prime Minister and to the government, at the same time the prosecutor of government officials. How are you supposed to do that? How are you supposed to be a defender and a prosecutor at the same time? So over the years, people have suggested separate the powers. You can't have the same person doing both. He has so much power. And he has a conflict of interest. And yet the people in power have stopped the changes necessary. And it's the people within the justice system. as the Minister of Justice says, it is a prosecutor's office within a prosecutor's office, right? There's a corrupt prosecutor's office within a prosecutor's office. And we have to pray for us in Israel and for people in America or every country, not just for an individual, not just pray for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And we're going to get through this, regardless if he goes to jail, doesn't go to jail, he's Prime Minister, not Prime Minister. The Jewish people are going to overcome this. Somehow, I'm a believing man, in God's plan, this is all necessary. Maybe this is all necessary in order for more Israelis to wake up and see the corruptness within the justice system to allow for the necessary changes to take place, and we finally get the leaders necessary that will put forth bring about the changes and not be afraid of the mafia tactics within the prosecutor's office and the justice system. Maybe. I'm a believer we're going to come out of this okay. All right? But we each have to pray that we merit the proper leaders and the best leaders and leaders who will be humble when they have all that power and know how to act appropriately and not act as if they are God and whimsically implement and affect people's lives without thinking because they're just so powerful. And that's the problem we have right now with a select few people that have an ideological agenda within the Israeli justice system. And this has been an issue that if you want to save Israel and get Israel on the right track, it's about making the changes to the justice system. Israel cannot have closed borders and not protect itself from illegal immigrants if we have a Supreme Court that constantly negates laws passed by Israel's parliament, by the Knesset, to protect Israel from illegal immigrants and from migrants. Right? That's what the Supreme Court has done. We are stuck with a growing population of illegal immigrants in Israel because the Supreme Court constantly negates the laws passed by Israel's parliament. You have a problem there. We have a problem when the Supreme Court makes rules stopping the Israeli army from protecting itself. It's been so legalized that officers and soldiers have to think 3-4 times before shooting. Yes, you want a soldier to think before shooting, but not 4 times. And not to be afraid of going to jail because they shoot, or the soldiers right now in the Nachal Haredi unit that are in jail because they were threatened by some Bedouins who are known to be very dangerous individuals at a gas station down south, and they just said, "Don't you dare threaten us." And nothing happened to the Bedouins, but yet the army placed the Israeli IDF soldiers in jail because of how they acted. You cannot have that. You need a system that defends soldiers. Yes, if someone does something wrong, then do something with them, but give them the benefit of the doubt, and they've been treated like criminals. This is a problem within this justice system we have here. And we have to make the necessary changes. People in power have to want to have that overseeing to ensure that they don't abuse the power they have. So we have to pray to merit the best system we can be, with the best people we can be, with the best setup we can be, and even an overseeing setup, so that people in power do not abuse that power, whether it's politicians. So far we got that covered, right? And also people within the justice system themselves need an overseeing power to ensure that they too don't abuse the power, because they're human. And humans make mistakes, and humans have desires, and they are flesh and blood, just like I'm flesh and blood. Even though they're a prosecutor, or they're a judge, or they're a Supreme Court judge, they're flesh and blood, and they can easily make the mistakes as well, and some of them do. And we need to make the changes necessary so that there is a fair system for all. That is the deep dive right now. And again, I will put the link below with the video I made last week that goes more into the details of the inconsistencies and, unfortunately, the mafia tactics, and a more of a delineation of the 20-year witch hunt that some within the legal establishment have been going after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to help you get a better understanding of this whole picture. In the meantime, like I always end off, I am an optimistic realist, and regardless if Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues, or if this indictment leads to him being guilty or leads to him being innocent, or whoever becomes prime minister, or whatever government we have, a good government, a bad government, whoever's leader, the Jewish people are a strong people. We will overcome everything. In the meantime, be proud that we have a strong Jewish state of Israel. We have a proud, thriving democracy that even indicts prime ministers, right? Whether you agree or disagree, the fact that we have a working system that allows this, we have a working system that we do not have military coups. We are a peaceful country where even minorities have rights and equalities. The Jewish state of Israel is a blessing in so many ways. We will overcome this, regardless of what happens with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And we are blessed. We are very blessed people to be living today in our state, in our sovereign state of Israel. So I hope this helped everybody a little bit to better understand. Anyone has questions, please write below or send me a message. I'll try my best to give you that information. And signing off from the ancestral homelands of the Jewish people, here the Judean hills, where I've always known it's been legal, even according to international law, for us to live here. And it is wonderful to finally have a U.S. administration to say straight out that it is legal for Jews to live in Judea and Samaria, for Jews to be able to build and live in our ancestral homeland, and not go with the lies of our enemies and so many other political players in the field and journalists who don't do their homework and don't research and don't study facts. Thanks everyone for watching. Shalom, shalom. Avi Abel. Take care.